You guys ever had like that one series that you actually just could not get into because of either experiences that was just a little bit too much, or most people will probably end up just talking about it a little bit too much and hampering on the experience once you end up getting into it? Well, that's not kind of what happened to me. So I actually been playing Pikmin 1 through 4 of late, and I have to say, finally being able to finish Pikmin 1, which was a game I did own as a kid when I owned the GameCube, was very satisfying. For one thing, Pikmin 1 was the actual first introduction for me for Pikmin. I didn't really play through Pikmin 2, and I definitely didn't play through 3 until the Wii U came out, obviously. But it was kind of nice to actually finally get into the game to finally figure out how I was supposed to be able to beat it, because when I got it for the GameCube, I had no idea what I was doing. I always end up getting to the second to last level, which was called the Distant Spring, and I just couldn't really get myself to be able to beat it, and I always end up getting the bad ending, or at some point I ended up getting a Pikmin extinction. Pikmin extinctions are not good if you know how the Pikmin series can go. Anyways, today's video, we're actually going to be taking a look at both Pikmin 1 through 4. I don't know why I said both. We're going to be taking a look at Pikmin 1 through 4 and essentially my journey and experiences through all 4 games. So, without further ado, my name is Pika, the electric yellow mouse who's going to be taking you through this magical world of video games. So I hope you guys enjoy. Sit back, relax, and let's get started. So, obviously, the first game that we're going to be talking about is obviously going to be Pikmin 1. It's essentially the beginning, and it will end up basically being the starting point of how this game franchise ends up basically evolving from Pikmin 1 all the way to Pikmin 4. So, Pikmin 1 was released on the GameCube, right? And it had a trailer for Luigi's Mansion Luigi's Mansion had a trailer for the game, which, at that point it didn't really matter because I kind of had 3 games when I had the GameCube on Christmas that evening, where we had Pikmin 1, Luigi's Mansion, and a Madden football game. Don't ask why one of those is an outlier for itself. I don't know why, but hey, that football game was actually pretty interesting to play. The fact that I popped it in and actually played it makes 0 sense to me. But anyways, Pikmin 1 I ended up playing as a kid, and it was something that I didn't really understand at first because I didn't really get what I was supposed to do. Like, as soon as the game basically bombarded me with a few text boxes here and there, basically saying that I have 30 days to be able to go ahead and get every single ship part, the enemy variety was kind of random and I didn't really understand them, and I just couldn't really get the concept of how Pikmin worked. But when I ended up playing it off of the Switch, I realized that I was just a dumb kid and really couldn't grasp the task of actually beating the game on the GameCube when I was a kid. I kind of wish I could go back and just slap myself and be like, bro, this game's not that hard. You just suck. And all you had to do was basically end up getting at least 2 ship parts per day to be able to end up beating the game in an effective run. And that's essentially what we technically did. There are some times where we actually got 3 ship parts because when you end up getting the ability of getting a radar, it actually shows you where all the ship parts are located. Some are kind of in places that are kind of annoying, and then some are kind of in places that are in plain sight, mind you. So, what's the story of Pikmin? Well, you end up playing as Captain Olimar, essentially the poster child for the series, and he was flying to his home, Hokatep, and unfortunately got hit by a meteor comet, crash landed on Earth, and that's pretty much it, because his entire ship got destroyed and all the ship parts, all 30 of them, all scattered throughout the entire planet. Luckily enough, the place that he landed was the impact site, and this ended up allowing Olimar to not only find his engine, but also to find the main critters known as Pikmin. Now, the Pikmins are pretty interesting. They're essentially lemmings, and they will always follow your order because that's just how they're programmed. They kind of think of Olimar kind of like a father figure, which is kind of bad considering I don't really know father figures that sends their children to their deaths, but hey, who knows? Here we are. You use the Pikmin to essentially push, defeat, grab, and also carry the ship parts in the game. as you end up progressing, you'll end up basically allowing yourself to obtain newer Pikmin, such as the yellow Pikmin that can be thrown higher and also carry bomb rocks, and then you have the blue Pikmin that can basically survive in water. And that's pretty much it. The blue Pikmin don't really do much else except they can survive water. Yay! That's kind of lame when you really say it out loud, considering that was like my favorite color to get, and I was wondering when you actually ran into them. Funny enough, it doesn't really take that long to get both yellow and blue Pikmin if you end up getting enough ship parts. You have to get a certain amount of ship parts to be able to end up gaining access to a new level. The first level that you will fully play is the Forest of Hope. And this level is a very great introduction, as it ends up introducing you to enemies, introducing you to walls, and introducing you to bomb rocks and yellow Pikmin. Basically introducing you to mechanics that you're essentially going to be seeing in a later level known as the Forest Navel. And now the Forest Navel as a kid was kind of the level that I just could not progress through at all. It was kind of the place that was the stopping point for me, not really the Distant Spring, because the Distant Spring I just forced myself to actually get to it once I, man up and actually went out of my way to get a few of the parts. Mind you, some of the parts I got were from the Forest of Hope and also the Impact Site, because it technically has 2 ship parts. It doesn't only have 1, so you do have to go back to the Impact Site at some point to be able to get that last ship part. And once I managed to get to the Distant Spring, that was it. I couldn't, for some reason, beat the game anymore. I just could not really grasp the task of figuring out what I was supposed to do in this area in time. It was kind of nuts, because it's like, Pikmin is obviously a real-time strategy type of game where you do have to strategically figure out what parts you want to get on that particular day, and then you have to essentially commit yourself to it. Sometimes you can end up having some very bad days where your Pikmins will just get slaughtered by either a boss or will just get slaughtered by a particular enemy that ends up hopping around. It's not really fun and can be very frustrating because you can't really rewind these days. That's not a feature until they introduce it in Pikmin 3. So whatever happens in these particular days that you're going through, that's it. You cannot fix that issue at all. So you can kind of understand the reason why it was a little bit difficult. Also, certain enemies kind of sucked. I couldn't really figure out how to defeat them without actually losing all my Pikmins, and I was just really bad at the game. But luckily enough, once I got older and figured out how the fundamentals work for Pikmin, it actually became easier. Once I realized that the red Pikmin were more so strength oriented, they had the capabilities of killing enemies a lot faster compared to yellows and blues, I kind of end up utilizing them the most to be able to destroy a few of the enemies that they can actually get to and reach. Sometimes you are forced to utilize blue Pikmin to fight enemies in the water. That's just unavoidable because both the yellow and the reds cannot swim, or better yet, they can't breathe. So they will just instantly die. Well, not really instantly die. You can use the whistle to save them, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the Pikmin AI is kind of weird, and this is obviously the age of the game where the AI for the Pikmin is not the best. Sometimes when you're building bridges, you can end up having the Pikmins trapped under it, and they will sometimes randomly die. Didn't happen to me, but it's a glitch that can essentially happen to a lot of veteran Pikmin players, and it can be very frustrating. Sometimes you can end up getting into situations where the Pikmins are just too stupid to actually progress with carrying an item. It's kind of nuts. Like, I'm surprised that, the AI was kind of this dumbfounded even in the second game. So it doesn't even get better there. It does get better once we get to 3 and onwards, but up until this point, 1 and 2 has probably one of the worst Pikmin AI that I've ever seen in a video game. Aside from, like, party members that are AI controlled. Anywho, once you manage to get all 29 ship parts, you will gain access to the final level, which is otherwise known as the final trial. Here you'll essentially end up spending the first day getting to the boss, and then the next day you'll essentially get to the boss and actually fight the boss. The final fight is otherwise known as the Emperor Bulblax. Now, he has 2 ways that you can defeat him. You can actually defeat him by sacrificing yellow Pikmin to feed him with the bomb, or you can go ahead and end up essentially stunning him by letting his tongue slap him in the face, which I think is a lot more of the method that you're supposed to do and not the other method of sacrificing your Pikmin. I don't really think the game is programmed to sacrifice your Pikmin in any shape or form. I really don't think that the game requires you to ever sacrifice Pikmin in this game. And that's kind of something that, you know, that's pretty interesting of a challenge that you can do for yourself. You can do a Deathless run if you so wish. You can't do a Captain Olimar run because Olimar's strength is piss ass and the enemies will recover most of their health, and that's kind of not good. It is impossible to do a Captain's only run unless you can program or hack the game where Olimar can punch enemies once and kill them in one hit. You not defeating any, I mean, even if you can't really do much of anything with Captain Olimar anyways. He can't even carry his own stuff, so whatever. But once you end up defeating Emperor Bulblax and ended up getting the piggy bank, yeah, that's right, you sacrifice all these lovable critters just to get a piggy bank. Once you do that, you actually get karma, so it doesn't even matter. Onwards to Pikmin 2. Now, Pikmin 2 was obviously released a few years after Pikmin 1, and I was actually shocked that this game was going to get a sequel. Not because I thought it sucked, I just thought that not a lot of people know. You have to also realize that during the time when the GameCube was coming out, the internet wasn't really fully a thing. So I saw Pikmin 2 like on a magazine, probably like Game Informer. That's like literally the only one I can remember because I was subscribed to them during the time. And it was interesting. The commercial that they showed was interesting to say the least. I didn't really understand it. It was a bunch of people in Pikmin outfits, especially the one that I'm kind of gravitating the most was the purple Pikmin, which was the new Pikmin type in Pikmin 2, and I was just I was confused.
Said with mustard. Make it 2.
Mustard. Control is good. You can see how good as 2 commanders lead a planetary treasure hunt in Pikmin 2. With 2-player mode, may the best scavenger win. Only for Nintendo GameCube. Rated E for everyone.
But to be fair, I also miss these kind of commercials. These silly commercials is kind of what gives me life and energy. Nintendo, bring them back, please. Ugh. Your commercials are too generic now. It's just a bunch of kids playing and that's it. It's like, that's great. That doesn't really translate to anything to me at all. I want to see kookiness. But whatever. I'm just losing my mind at this point. Anywho, the only reason why I was kind of shocked about this is because Pikmin 2 didn't take that long to get, like, the Pikmin series didn't take that long to get a Pikmin 2, but Luigi's Mansion it took forever. Luigi's Mansion did not get a sequel until the 3DS. Do you know the gap between the damn GameCube, the DS, the Game Boy Advance, and like, well, that's it. That's really it. Like the friggin' gap between that, it was pretty far considering Pikmin 2 just, you know, got a game right after it. But to be fair, to Luigi's Mansion's 2 credit, Pikmin 2 was just kind of using the same engine for Pikmin 1, so it was probably easy for Nintendo to just, you know, utilize the same engine that they used for Pikmin 1 and just basically just transfer it over to Pikmin 2 by just adding a few new changes. Hell, you can kind of tell this though, because Pikmin 2's stages kind of are just seasonal variations of the first 4 stages that you played in Pikmin 1. The 4th stage in Pikmin 2 is just a combination of 2 stages, while the other 3 stages are just seasonal versions of the other stages in the game. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of like a good and a bad thing. You know, they're just reusing assets here and there by just changing a few things. But before we kind of get further as to what are the gameplay changes in the game, let's actually just talk about the story. So after the events of Pikmin 1, Olimar actually goes back to his planet Halkatet, but unfortunately he finds out that the company that he works for is in debt, because apparently this little dude right here, Louie, everybody loves this guy. He's like the best character ever for some reason, actually is the reason why the entire company is in debt. So Olimar has to go back to the Earth planet that he found the Pikmin in, so that way he can end up collecting the treasures, because it's found out that the treasures are worth a lot of money compared to the crap that they find on the planet, because the planet that they have, they don't have anything there, so that kind of sucks. So anyways, Olimar takes Louis forcibly, mind you. I don't know why I know why. He has to take Louis because Louis was the issue. So we take Louis with us, and Louis is a strange character, and I mean very, very strange character. He's not like he's not like the weird Luigi brother or anything. No, Louis is just weird. I don't understand his character, and he confuses me. But maybe that's part of the reason why I love him, because he's like me. I'm confusing and very hard to understand. But anyways, once you end up, landing on the new planet, you obviously see that it's all covered in snow. Man, it must have taken Olimar that long to actually get back to his home if it's freaking snowing here. But then you get introduced to red Pikmin. This happens in all the Pikmin games, where the first Pikmin you always will get introduced will always be reds. So I'm not going to really repeat myself. You find the red Pikmin, you gather the Pikmin, you basically end up doing the tutorial segment, and then you find out that there are cave systems in the game. Boom, there you go. But there is another difference. So let's actually talk about like the gameplay changes into the game. For one thing, the gameplay changes for Pikmin 2. Well, there is none. I mean, in terms of captains, they both play the same. The only difference now is that you have to control both of them, not simultaneously. You can only end up controlling one at a time, unless you end up whistling them and then they'll just follow you. One of the captains will just follow you, but that's it. But the thing about having two captains is that you can now split Pikmin jobs to do like different things. But the thing is that I kind of find this feature a little bit useless in Pikmin 2. The reason why I say it's useless in Pikmin 2, as I stated before, Pikmin 2 essentially reuses the stages from Pikmin 1, right? So the stages are not that massive to require you to utilize the two captains as much. Hell, I wouldn't even go on to say that when I first found what Pikmin 2's information was about, I thought the game was a co-op game first. But no, the co-op system or the versus system is a separate option altogether. And it kind of sucks too, because I really wish that Pikmin 2 was a co-op game, but unfortunately it's not. It's a game that you just play with just two captains and that's it. Kind of a missed opportunity, considering I think during the year when Pikmin 2 was coming out, I think there was like a lot of games that were kind of doing like co-op stuff. I think Halo 2 came out too. I mean, that'd be kind of interesting if Halo 2 actually came out. That'd be nuts. Anywho, the main focus of Pikmin 2, aside from the overworld segments, you have to go ahead and go inside caves, because you see the treasures that you find in overworld, there's not a lot of them, so majority of your time will be in these many caves in the game, and these are not people's favorite part of Pikmin 2. People more so prefer the Pikmin 1 style of game, and you can actually tell that once we actually get to Pikmin 3. Pikmin 2 is my favorite, really enough. I actually like the cave systems. In fact, the cave systems is the thing that I actually like the most out of this game. There's nothing else I really like about the game, because there's nothing. There's no real thing or meat into the game, because the overworld is not much to really scream about, and the cave systems themselves are pretty interesting, even if they are a little bit on the RNG side of things. There are like three particular caves that I'm always reminded of: the subterranean complex, which ends up focusing on a lot of explosions and these Gatling gunner guys that like to end up reviving themselves once you kill them. Then you have the boss there, which is the man at legs, who is easy boss, but if you're me, who for some reason decides to play Pikmin 2 for the very first time and has no clue how this guy works, you'll just sit there and wonder why your Pikmins are getting slaughtered. But it's okay. This guy is easy. I thought to myself, in fact, I thought that utilizing one of the two new sprays in the game would have been useful. So there are actually two sprays in the game now, one that causes petrification and one that actually causes your Pikmin to actually end up attacking faster and be a little bit stronger. Guess which one they actually returns in the other two games? not the damn petrification one. In fact, the petrification one actually gets replaced to a much better petrification in Pikmin 4. So that's great. So yeah, once you end up fighting the man at legs, the subterranean complex is not really complex. It's just annoying and a lot of pits where you can easily throw your Pikmins off the edge if you're not careful. The next area is the submerged castle, and this ends up spawning the most annoying enemy in the game, known as the water wraith. The dream den is essentially the final area and the final cave that you'll be exploring. And it ends up spawning basically a few bosses here and there. It's not really that complicated. They kind of just have like enemy layouts that you just have to defeat, and that's really about it. And once you get to the end, you end up fighting Louis. Yeah, you fight Louis at the bottom because he's taking control. Well, it's implied that he's taking control of the Titan Dweevil, which are new enemies in the game, which are known as beings that love to carry things, which is what this guy actually carries. He carries an electric weapon, he carries a fire weapon, he carries a bubble weapon, carries a poison weapon, and all that jazz. But once you end up getting rid of all the parts, he's essentially a very easily defeated enemy. And once you actually do that, that's when you actually save Louis, quote unquote save Louis, because once you finish completing the debt, I don't know how the hell Olimar left Louis when he went back to his home planet, but hey, you have to take the bear with you, and then you have to go find Louis, which you find him in like the final zone in the game, and that's really it. It's ridiculous and doesn't make any sense. But it gets even worse once we actually go into Pikmin 3. So, before I actually go into Pikmin 3, let me get my final thoughts, because I didn't really give my final thoughts for both 1 and 2. So my final thoughts for Pikmin 1 is that I'm actually glad that I end up basically playing the game off of the Switch to be able to end up understanding how the mechanics work. And I was also excited to finally get to the final zone and to finally end up beating the boss and also beat the game as a whole. For Pikmin 2, I'm glad that I finally got to experience the nonsense and the RNG factor that the game has to offer, and also some of the very annoying caves. But I will end up admitting I can understand why people don't really like the cave systems that much, because the caves don't really have much of a sense of differentiation from themselves, aside from being brown cave, the occasional outside, the kitchen, or the playroom, I guess. Like, they do have different styles and themes to them when you get to like some of the later ones, but even I will end up admitting 90% of them all just have brown caves after brown caves with the occasional kitchen changing themes and bathroom changing themes, and that's really it. It's kind of unfortunate too, because the caves in Pikmin 2, they kind of backtracked for Pikmin 3 and actually got rid of the caves and basically reverted back to the Pikmin 1 style game. So, as further ado, let's actually talk about the story real quick. So, unlike Pikmin 1 and 2 where you take control of Olimar, this time around you're actually taking control of 3 new captains known as Brittany, Alf, and Charlie. These 3 were essentially tasked to end up finding fruits for their planet because their planet was kind of dried up. Their planet is known as the Kopais, and they're called the Kopais themselves because that's their race. So they're tasked to essentially gather juice and fruits so that way, you know, their planet can survive. Unfortunately, when they were about to get to Earth, yet again, this random comet, I do not understand what is with this comet's beef, end up hitting their ship, and it essentially scattered them all over the place. Your goal for the story, for the bits of the first half, is to essentially get all 3 captains together. Unfortunately, Charlie gets captured by some mysterious enemy, and Alf is essentially the one that you control. I find that Alf is kind of the main character. I mean, hell, he's the one in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as Olimar's alternate skin. So I like to think that he's kind of the main character. I don't know. But Alf ends up finding Brittany. After that, he ends up essentially finding a few Pikmins here and there. All the same thing as you do in all of them. Alf ends up finding red Pikmin, utilizes them to basically get off the planet, and ends up basically searching for Brittany. Throughout the course of the game, the captains need to go ahead and find something called the key drive or the G drive or whatever, the thing that allows them to warp back to their home base, because without that drive they are unable to actually leave this planet. Now, unlike Pikmin 1 where Olimar did not have enough oxygen, in Pikmin 3 the game over is essentially if you run out of juice. But luckily enough, the game gives you a lot of opportunity to obtain a lot of juice in the game. Yeah, the juices are essentially the ship parts in the game. That's literally what it is. Just replace ship parts with fruits and you essentially have yourself a glorified HD version of Pikmin 1. And that's kind of what I think of Pikmin 3, is that it is just a HD version of the first game, and for good reason too. Maybe they kind of wanted to go back to form because they didn't want to go ahead and lose their audience, which is very respectable. But to me, I kind of wish that it did other things aside from just being Pikmin 1 again, you know? Not to say that it doesn't really do a lot of changes, like it's just not that much for me. In fact, I find that some of the changes are kind of a little bit more frustrating in my honest opinion. So, since you have 3 captains this time around, the game kind of more so focuses on utilizing the 3 captain mechanic by allowing you to be able to get across big gaps by throwing captains to other platforms and also throwing Pikmins as well. This can be a little bit difficult and also be very awkward to do sometimes, but that's kind of the difference between Pikmin 2 and 3. For Pikmin 2, you had Louis, but you couldn't throw Louis. You also couldn't throw Olimar either. The only thing you can do with Louis is control him and just throw other Pikmins, and that's it. He was just essentially a blue version of Olimar, and that's it. He had no other qualities to himself aside from just being able to just be the same exact captain as Olimar. While for Pikmin 3, as they are also the same thing as each other, you can end up chucking them at different things. This ends up allowing you to get across bigger gaps that you would never be able to get to, or allow you to go ahead and get up to ledges that you also would never be able to get to. The Kopais, for some reason, do not have the capabilities of fighting because they cannot do their melee attacks at all. Not like it would matter anyways, because to be honest, most of the enemies here can be destroyed by simply just bum rushing them with your new charge attack. Essentially, the game now gives you a charge ability where if you end up allowing your Pikmin to just charge the enemy, they'll essentially literally wreck their health depending on what kind of Pikmin types you're using. If you're using red Pikmin, they'll essentially get floored. The game also introduced 2 new Pikmin, something I didn't actually mention about Pikmin 2. You do have 2 new Pikmins in that game too, which are otherwise known as purples and whites. Purples are essentially more heavyweights and has the capabilities of carrying 10 times their size, while white Pikmin are essentially immune to poison and are very, very fast and are the only ones to be able to end up finding treasures underground. Thankfully, this system is changed, as for Pikmin 3 ends up introducing rock Pikmin, which are essentially nerfed versions of purple Pikmin, I have to say, because they kind of work a similar way minus the stun damage, and they are immune to crush, while the flying Pikmins are kind of like the white Pikmins, but much better. They don't have any poison properties, but they can end up carrying a lot of things across large gaps, and that's kind of what makes them significantly better. The only drawback is that they suck at ground combat, but they're good at aerial combat. At least I like to believe. Sometimes I kind of feel that they still suck even when they're actually fighting their corresponding weakness. Anywho, throughout the course of the game, you'll end up finding these signals, and when you get to these signals, you are forced to fight bosses. Bosses in Pikmin can range from small to large. In Pikmin 3, most of the bosses that you're fighting are very big enemies, and depending on the kind of player you are, you can either kill these guys in one cycle, or you can go ahead and just own them and cry. The first boss I find is super awkward, so they got rid of one feature in the game that was in Pikmin 1 and 2, and that's being able to gather your Pikmin up. You can't do that in 3 from what have played. I'm not sure if that is changed for the deluxe version. You couldn't really do that in the Wii U version, which was very awkward for me to actually get used to, making the first boss a little bit annoying to fight. Weirdly enough, after the first boss, every other boss is kind of easy to beat. it usually takes me like 2 days to beat them because, well, when I get to them, it's the first time for me fighting them. Minus the first one. The first one I already knew how to fight, but the second and third and onwards, I didn't really know how you fight them at all because I had owned Pikmin 3, but I never beaten it. Mainly because I'm gonna be honest with you, it's so weird because I know it's like, I don't know like how many people praise Pikmin 3, but to me, I just didn't really enjoy Pikmin 3 that much. It just felt like I said, it just felt like Pikmin 1 again, and maybe that's probably what it is because I didn't really, you know, thrive with Pikmin 1's style. I had to be fine with it because A, it was the first game, and also we didn't know that we were going to get others, so I was just fine with it. But after going through 1, 2, and 3, I was like thinking to myself, it's like, oh, this is just basically just Pikmin 1 again, just HDified and on the Wii U, and that's it. And I'm like, I mean, I guess, you know, they got rock Pikmin, they got flying Pikmin, and you got the fruits to get, but some of the bosses were kind of annoying. The flying Pikmins were too weak, in my honest opinion, and I just didn't really find the Kopai characters to be overly interesting, to say the least. I mean, sometimes when they're saying things, they usually are saying the same exact stuff. And the juice system is interesting to be able to see all the juice colors and whatnot. So that's kind of cool. But overall, that's it. The only caveat about this is the fact that when you end up defeating the B boss, you end up finding out that Louie exists in the game. So I guess there's that. And I mean, hey, to be fair, if you really wanted to hate Louie more, you could probably hate him in this game. Louie literally ends up jacking all the Kopai's juices and basically Kool-Aid Man himself into the other direction in a previous level that you played. And then after that, you have to go after him. Luckily enough, the time actually moves a little bit slower this time when you actually land, and it allows you to basically end up gathering fruits again. And this is kind of where you end up getting introduced to blue Pikmin, which is so late in the game because I'm like, really? We now getting blue Pikmin? Okay, well, whatever. Then you have to fight this big giant titan looking boss enemy, and it's not bad, it's just, you know, weird looking. And once you beat him, you finally end up rescuing Louie, in quotes, and then you tie him up because, let's be real here, he stole their juices. He needs to be tied down. Louie ends up telling you that Olimar is in the final area of the game, and this is kind of why I found out that the game is relatively short and not that long of a game at all, because I feel that I was close to the end, maybe not, I'm not really entirely sure. I don't even know where I stopped when I first played Pikmin 3, but I can end up saying that I didn't beat the game. I was just more so surprised that the ending was so close. So when I finally played it on stream and finally got to it, I don't mind it. It's an escort mission. Essentially, Olimar got kidnapped by some weird yellow plasma looking enemy, and it basically treats him as a child and protects him. When we try to basically take Olimar back to our ship, the little membrane thing tries to essentially get him back and take him back to his home place. You will spend either 3 or 2 days, depending on what kind of player you are. Hell, I wouldn't even go off to say that you'll probably be able to beat it in 1 day if you're fast enough. Well, probably not really 1 day, because it does kind of take a bit to actually kill the boss. Because when you get to the end, you do have to fight it. But the thing I do like about this segment is that you're essentially in a cave again, but it's not the same exact caves like in Pikmin 2. They're nothing like that. So you have to kind of go ahead and do a bunch of mechanics with different types of Pikmins to be able to end up basically progressing out of the exit. And it's kind of cool because, you know, you have to use flying Pikmin, you got to use rock Pikmin, you got to use, you know, your other type of Pikmin, your yellows, your blues. I like it. I actually like the escort segment in this part. The boss fight, however, is weird and awkward, and I do not understand it. It's a very confusing enemy, but it's not that bad. I know it feels like that I'm not praising Pikmin 3 as I should, but personally, my experiences, I just didn't really like the game. I didn't really like its gameplay loop. I didn't really like the levels. The levels were kind of not really that interesting in my honest opinion. I kind of found them boring, and you know, part of me just kind of just wanted the game to just end so I can get to 4, because I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the deluxe version actually fixes a lot of issues I have with the Wii U version, because I did play the Wii U version. So I'm assuming maybe the deluxe version probably fixes it. Probably doesn't. I don't really know, but I'll never know until I end up buying the deluxe version in like the coming future. Maybe I'll do a redo video of Pikmin 3, but for right now, my opinion on the game is that it's okay for what it is. I don't mind that they went back to the traditional Pikmin 1 formula, but even I will end up saying that I kind of wish that they, added other things aside from just Pikmin 1 stuff. But hey, what are you gonna do? Anywho, let's talk about Pikmin 4. Now that we're finally on Pikmin 4, I think before we kind of jump into the new game and everything, let's actually give my pros and cons to all three of the games. Because throughout this whole entire commentary, I could kind of end up thinking that my thought processes for 1, 2, and 3 kind of didn't really make much sense. So let me give the pros to all three of the games. For pros for Pikmin 1. I do like that it's more of a very good introduction to folks who wants to end up getting into the series and basically end up learning how the three colored Pikmin works, such as how reds is resistant to fire and how they're more strength oriented and they can be able to go ahead and kill enemies faster. How yellow Pikmins are basically utilized as a means of carrying bombs while also being thrown higher because they're very lightweight. And blue Pikmin are just blue Pikmin. My only cons that I can give for Pikmin 1 is that it's unfortunately the first game in the series, so it ends up having a little bit of issues such as a little bit of bugs here and there, some glitches that can end up happening, but normally those will not happen if you're knowledgeable about it or if you are a bit paying attention. Overall, I could say it's a very good entry point to the series, so it gets a good little pass. For now, for Pikmin 2. In my opinion, I like the cave system that they introduced. It gives the bit of a longevity for the game because I do feel that Pikmin 1 was shorter on the playtime while Pikmin 2 was just a little bit longer. Now, that's not to say that with Pikmin 2 being long makes it a good game. In fact, I would say that it's understandable that it is the black sheep of the series because of the fact that the cave system exists. Considering the fact that you're spending majority of your time in the caves, it is very unfortunate that you don't really spend a lot of time in the overworld. And I feel that that's kind of where Pikmin 2 is its weakest. Its strength does come from its underground segments, but the weakest part of the game is unfortunately the overworld. If they kind of had like a bit of a balance, it would have been a lot better for Pikmin 2's case, and also didn't really have too much RNG elements where the cave system just felt a bit flat. Like there wasn't really a lot of or any elevation that you had to really do. It was just basically flat surfaces with the occasional different themes that you just have to go ahead and end up dealing with. The bosses were pretty interesting to say the least, but overall, even I will end up admitting, as time goes on, if I end up playing Pikmin 2 again after playing through 4, I will say that the caves in Pikmin 2 are not really the best in terms of what they have in Pikmin 4. So, it's a good first impression, I think, considering, RNG elements were pretty nice, and that's really about it. For now, for Pikmin 3. Now, I do end up mentioning that Pikmin 3 was essentially an HD version of Pikmin 1, and I still hold to that. And the reason for that is because I feel that if the game kind of did a little bit of different things, aside from just making the areas bigger or having like different segments for the cave systems that you enter, I feel it would have been a little bit better. But like I said, I still feel that some of the issues that I have probably would have been fixed in the deluxe edition. I'm not entirely sure. Also, the lack of grouping your Pikmin with the right stick kind of sucks, because I'm not really a fan of trying to just manually let the Pikmins move on their own. I feel that kind of control is a little bit awkward. Like I said, I don't know if there is a grouping mechanic in Pikmin 3. All I know is that I never found it. All I know is that there is the charge feature, and there's a lock-on feature that allows you to lock on different parts of the enemy, and that's it. So yeah, even though, I have my issues with Pikmin 3, it's still a fine game for what it is. It's a game that kind of ends up returning to formula for those who didn't like Pikmin 2, and it basically gave players a good impression of what the Wii U can do graphically, you know? And that's really about it. That's kind of what I can say about the 3 games. But now, as time goes on and we have waited, or I should say the Pikmin fans have waited, we can finally enter the Pikmin 4 era. And I have to say, this is probably by far the best Pikmin game I've ever seen in my life. The fact that they took this long for development is amazing. In 2015, Miyamoto has stated that, you know, Pikmin 4 was in good development. And to be honest, you know, a lot of people believed him. You know, he mentioned that it was in good hands and it was developed well and it was going to take a while. And I can understand the reason why. With all the gameplay that Pikmin 4 has, it's very understandable how long this game had to take. In fact, I would like to think that the thing that kind of took the most has to be the mascot of the game, I like to believe now, which was Ochi. Ochi is essentially a puppy rescuer who has the capabilities of essentially being a much better second captain than Louis and basically out-trumps all the Kopai characters. Ochi is essentially a mount that you can ride on, be able to utilize to pick up things, be immune to all elements if you buy the appropriate gear, and is just outright adorable. This guy is probably by far the best character in the game. Speaking of characters in the game, you have a lot of characters in Pikmin 4 compared to Pikmin 1 through 3. Like, there are a lot of characters. Majority of them are castaways, which are essentially beings that you have to go ahead and rescue throughout the games in caves and whatnot. And then you also have your crewmates, which are Shepard, Colin, and Yanni, not Hojo, the very loud guy, and Bernard. That's not his name. I don't remember his name. Don? I don't know. All I know is that your crewmates are cool, and I have to say that this, like, I don't really like the Kopai characters all that much, but I gotta say that I definitely like the characterizations for the crewmates that you have in Pikmin 4. Like, their personalities is fantastic. They all have like different types of issues or different types of personalities in themselves, and I have to find that, you know, I like these guys more than the Pikmin 3 cast. It's not hard to beat considering there's only 3 of them you have to deal with, while this one you have a lot of characters with different types of personalities melded together. Now, aside from Ochi and aside from your crewmates, what is the gameplay, or I should say, what is the story behind Pikmin 4? Now, since Pikmin 4 is old, or for now anyways, I'm gonna be going into spoiler territory, so if you want to avoid that, then I feel that you should probably turn off the video. But if you want to go ahead and kind of skip to wherever the hell the conclusion is for this game, skip to wherever I put it, because I do not know where the ending is going to be here. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk about the story of Pikmin 4. So you end up taking control of Olimar for the first half of the game, and by first half, it's not really that much of a first half. It's kind of like the tutorial segment to teach you how to play the game as per usual. Olimar is essentially lost, and he ends up activating his signal to be able to contact the rescue corps that they can be able to end up saving him. Unfortunately, the rescue corps ends up getting scattered onto Earth once again. I swear I'm just convinced that this is going to be the same plot for Pikmin 5, except this time it's going to be a giant fist that's going to just punch the spaceship and just cause them to just scatter into like hell or whatever. I don't know. This happens every damn time. I'm so done here. So you end up creating your very own captain character this time with the character creation. I gotta say, the character creation is not like, it's not really that big of a deal, to be honest. It's kind of weak. in all fairness, it's like you think you're gonna get like some fantastic stuff, but there's some faces I like. I still like the one that we used throughout the entire playthrough, which was basically Tired Face, because that's me every single damn day of trying to figure out what the hell to do with my life. Anywho, with you creating your character, you get introduced to Ochi, you get introduced to Colin, you get introduced to Shepard, and then you get introduced to the same old dealio as you get introduced in all 3 games. You find red Pikmin, and you utilize the red Pikmin to essentially carry the treasures in the game. This time around, treasures are not like Pikmin 2, and they're not like the fruits in Pikmin 3. In fact, the treasures and the fruits that you collect, or anything that you collect in the game, ends up converting into sparklium. Sparkliums is essentially needed for you to be able to end up getting further into the story of the game, because each level needs a certain amount of sparklium so that way you can end up progressing. So you end up finding different types of treasures this time around, and also different types of fruits. They're all categorized similar to how they are in 3 and 2, something I didn't really mention, how they always end up categorizing certain things here and there, and they're more categorized here. Whereas they have like the Game Boy Advance SP, which, it's kind of cool. You can open it. It does the little Game Boy Advance noise, and gotta say the SP is still by far my favorite handheld device up to this day, because I'm not really a fan of the 3DS, but I'm complaining again about crap that I'm usually always complaining about. Anywho, you end up collecting most of these treasures to be able to get yourself some sparklium, so that way you can end up progressing with the plot of the game. The plot of the game is essentially you need to end up rescuing all your crewmates while also rescuing all the castaways, but also rescuing Olimar. You end up finding Olimar fairly easy. Trust me, he's not really hard to figure out. In fact, if you end up playing the tutorial segment, you will already know that the moss character that you see, which is the same exact dog species as Ochi, is hanging out with this being known as a leafling. Leaflings are essentially captains that are converted into, I guess, Pikmins, to say the least, I want to say, because in all honesty, I don't really know what leaflings are, but I like to say that leaflings are addicted to Dondori, which is a thing that you have been doing since Pikmin 1 through 3. Like, you've been doing this since the very beginning of the series. Dondori, for Pikmin terms, basically trying to figure out how to micromanage your time and being more successful. So for example, if you have a time limit, aka Pikmin 1, you have to go ahead and figure out how you can utilize your time in the most optimal way, so that way you can end up getting a lot of things done. And since I played through Pikmin 1 through 3, Dondori is my bitch, and it's not gonna take me down. And why do I say that? Because these challenges that you'll be doing versus Dondori and the actual Dondori stuff where you're basically collecting a bunch of items to be able to get a lot of points, they're nothing. They do get harder after a while though, to the point that I actually just could not care anymore. To get the platinum rank for the versus Dondori, you have to get essentially a lot higher points than your opponent. And for the score attack Dondori, you essentially have to end up getting everything in the field to be able to end up getting the platinum. It's not too bad if you end up configuring out what you're supposed to exactly manage and what you can actually get. The best thing I do like about it is that these type of challenges do not take your Pikmin number. In fact, they give you default Pikmin, such as the rocks, the reds, the yellows, whatever corresponding Pikmin they want to give you, and you and your opponent, or you in the score attack, have to utilize these Pikmins to their fullest advantage. You do find extra Pikmins in the field. In fact, in the versus Dondori, when you end up collecting enemies, they obviously end up converting into Pikmin, just like they do in the overworld. While in the score attack, you can find stranded Pikmins fighting enemies randomly, but they are not dying to them, so you don't really have to worry. You don't have to like rush to them or anything. But once you kill the enemy, those Pikmins will join you, and then you end up basically having more and more Pikmin. And that's the thing I kind of like about it. They do bring back the camera, which was something I didn't mention about Pikmin 3. The bosses that you fought in Pikmin 3, the camera was not the best. It sometimes was more so of a downwards camera, and you couldn't really control the camera in a way of how you did with Pikmin 1 and 2. They fixed that in 4, where the camera is now back to the original Pikmin 1 and 2 style, which I like, because I'm not really a fan of the camera system in Pikmin 3, but that's another gripe with myself when it comes to Pikmin 3. Like I said, don't know if it's changed in the deluxe version, but hey, it's here in 4, it's better here in 4, and that's all that really matters. So once you end up essentially figuring out a bunch of things here and there with the whole leaflings, you can end up basically progressing with the plot, but you do have to do some of the caves to be able to get more sparklium. The caves are significantly better in Pikmin 4 than they are in Pikmin 2. Remember how I mentioned that in Pikmin 2 they're basically sometimes just generic hallways that you just have to progress through, and that's really about it? Pikmin 4 basically changes the caves to be more mechanic heavy and not so much hallway number 56. And their themings are a lot better. Sometimes they do reuse some themes here and there, but they do kind of end up trying to change it up so that way the themes is not really that bad. Like you have a mechanic theme, you have a bathroom theme, you have a cave theme, you have a beach-like theme, and then you have this other type of themes here and there. It's really, really good of how they essentially realized that people did like the cave system in Pikmin 2. Even though I said that Pikmin 2 is the black sheep, I will end up saying that there are Pikmin 2 fans out there. Nintendo wanted to kind of end up focusing on trying to make it so that Pikmin 4 was a blend of both Pikmin 3, 2, and 1 all melded together, and I think they did a very good job and a very good balance. You have Ochi, who's essentially a much better captain and a much better companion and a second player, and then you have yourself, which, to be honest, like, even though yourself you cannot end up carrying anything, I have to say your character is actually pretty good at doing some stuff too. Not like fantastic, mind you, but they're really good too. They have the capabilities of basically climbing on top of Ochi, using Ochi as a means of attacking most enemies, and you can end up increasing Ochi's damage if you end up basically getting enough castaways. Ochi will end up obtaining these pooch drives, and this is more so depending on how many castaways you can get in a cave or how many castaways he rescues in general. And you can use those pup drives to go ahead and increase Ochi's capabilities. And this is pretty important too, because having Ochi have a very good compatibility with a lot of the equipments and also a lot of his strengths will end up making Ochi into a complete beast and allow you to end up defeating 90% of enemies. Speaking of enemies, before I end up continuing with the story, enemies no longer respawn in the overworld. Once you kill an enemy, that enemy is gone for good. Now, this might be a feature that most people might not like, or most people will kind of just prefer. I mostly prefer, because I don't really want the enemies to come back, because some of them are kind of annoying, depending on which one you're tackling. But it does kind of make the overworld boring to explore, because it kind of means that you kind of just slaughtered all the enemies in the area. Like, on one end, there is a strategy for killing all the enemies when you land in an area for the very first time, but then there's also a problem with that because there's no threat. I think what they could have done to counteract this, they could have like send in new type of enemies to be spawned, but then that would kind of require them to have like, well, no, because they could have just reused. They like, personally, they could have just reused some enemies here and there as they just respawn in the older or newer areas or whatever. But it's not really a big, massive deal in my opinion, because getting Pikmin in Pikmin 4 is not hard like how it is in like the first game. I say the first game because 2 and 3 are relatively easy to restock on Pikmin, while for 1, if you get yourself a Pikmin extinction, it's pretty difficult to kind of end up rebuilding your army back, if I have to say, because I would know that because I dealt with that. But for Pikmin 4, I feel it's a lot easier. In fact, the way how you distribute Pikmins now is a little bit different. Compared to Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, you kind of have to figure out what Pikmins you wanted to take during that one day. While for Pikmin 4, however, you now have an auto system that just basically gives you the Pikmins that you need for that particular area. I actually like this change because it's quick and you don't have to go ahead and force yourself to figure out what Pikmins you want to take on the field. Sometimes it is best to kind of end up taking your own though. Like the last level, you do have to kind of end up taking purples to do the same thing as you did for Pikmin 2, but I'm not going to mention what it is, because if you know what Pikmin 2 needed for purples, you should probably already know that they make a reference to it in 4 as well. In fact, that's what 4 essentially is. 4, I feel, is kind of like an anniversary celebration for Pikmin in general, because Pikmin 4 makes a lot of references to all the games that exist, and I like that because it's really cool. Back to the story, because I'm tentatively forgetting some things. I haven't really finished the story entirely. So once you end up collecting all the leafling buddies and also found Olimar, yes, he's a leafling. Is it really that obvious that it's Olimar? Look, he has a giant red nose. Who else is it going to be? But once you end up rescuing Olimar, And the way how you rescue him, you have to go ahead and rescue the doctor. Once you've rescued the doctor, you will be sent on a night expedition, which is a new feature that is added into Pikmin 4. This allows the player to finally explore the nighttime versions of the areas. And you always wonder why we never could end up exploring the nighttime. Well, it's not explained still, but does explain that the enemies are a little bit more aggressive because you have to protect these little towers known as luminals. These luminals, once activated, are essentially trying to create a little bit of a slime goo sap thing, a glow sap, so we can end up utilizing it as a medicine to be able to cure the leaflings. Unfortunately though, this entire process causes the enemies to go a little bit edgy. So they will end up trying to go after the luminol and destroy it, and you essentially have yourself a little bit of a tower defense. These segments are not bad, but they're relatively short because they don't really take that long, especially if you kill all the enemies, and it's very easy to kill all the enemies in that area if you're really good. But you don't utilize your regular Pikmins. No, you utilize the new Pikmin type, which are known as Glow Pikmins. And Glow Pikmins are pretty interesting. They're immune to practically everything, and they have a little skill that allows you to conjure up a spirit ball and throw it at an enemy and stun them and allow the Glow Pikmins to basically go ham on them. You can't use this every single time. It does take a while to recharge, but it is very useful against bigger enemies, especially if you have a large group of glow Pikmin. You end up collecting these star bits to be able to end up gathering more of the Pikmin, and it's essentially a very good segment and a little bit of a good downtime in my honest opinion. Then you have I also didn't mention that, you know, glow Pikmins are not the only new Pikmins. You also have ice Pikmin, which are relatively cool, minus the pun. They have the capabilities of freezing water, and they also have the capabilities of freezing the enemies. The enemies being frozen is probably by far the best feature ever, and to be honest, enemies getting frozen kind of ends up explaining why I think the enemies never respawn. And that's kind of the thing that was in my mind whenever enemies get frozen. I always thought that, oh, if an enemy is frozen and it dies, I mean, it's impossible for it to respawn again. But no, even when you don't even pick up the bodies to take back to the onion, yeah, those enemies are still dead on the ground until they are actually converted by the onion to create more Pikmin. So we have a conversion. You don't start out with 100 Pikmin right out the bat. You have to kind of end up increasing that by getting these garlic frolics that allows you to end up increasing your Pikmin stash. And what's weird about these is that there's more than them in the game for some reason, but once you reach 100, they don't really do much. I mean, they do spat out They spat out potions, and they also spat out the nectar that the Pikmins can take to be able to allow them to become flower Pikmin. But that's really about it. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Once you end up fighting Olimar one final time in a Dondori match, you'll end up curing him, and then the player will end up going back to their home. But not until the players actually realize that Ochi is kind of in trouble. Because you see, Ochi, throughout the course of the game, starts to end up growing a Pikmin-like tail, and this game finally ends up explaining why Pikmins never actually come with us by the end of the game. And that's because they cannot thrive in the oxygen that Hokotet, Kopais, or whatever anybody else lives at in the from the list of castaways. So we have to go back and we have to figure out how to cure Ochi. And this is when the second part of the game actually takes place. Now, at first, I thought that, oh, once we rescue Olimar, that would have been it, and that would have been the end of the game. No. You see, because Pikmin 2 introduced a beloved character, and that beloved character is known as Louie, the devil spawn of the Pikmin series. God damn, this guy, I was shocked when seeing this asshole again. And he's not an asshole per se, he's just annoying. He's not even an asshole, he's just annoying. And Louie, we find out that he's kind of like capturing different Kopai characters. Yeah, by the way, we have discounted Kopai characters. Hope you like the 3 non-Kopai characters in the game. And it's your job to essentially rescue them. and you need to rescue one specific one. I think her name is Nana, I think, or Yana. No, I don't really remember her name, but she's the one who has the capabilities of curing Ochi. But when you end up rescuing her from Louise's ridiculous clutches, she ends up essentially telling you that she'll need something from a particular being that can be able to be obtained from a being that's being controlled by Louis. I don't really understand how this video game works, but essentially Ochi needs a dog fur to essentially end up curing him. And what better way is to end up finding a cave known as the Cave for a King. Or is it Cave for Kings? The Cave for a King. I'm gonna call it that. The Cave for a King is essentially the final dungeon in the entirety of Pikmin 4. And I have to say, compared to the Dream Den or the King Den or whatever the hell the den is called, this cave, I like. It ends up basically being an entirety of a boss rush, and I like it. I like all the bosses in the game. With the new mechanic of how Ochi works and everything, I have to say that it is actually a very thrilling take on fighting the bosses. Like, I don't find the bosses annoying, I don't find them frustrating, and I just find them very pleasing to just fight all of them together in this 20th floor. And once you get to the 20th floor, you end up fighting Ochi, and a very interesting boss fight, to say the least. And the music just fucking pops off, can I just say the least? I know it's like I'm saying the F word, but it's like, dude, if you listen to the music, it freaking slaps, bro. But other than that, once you end up finally completing that and getting the DNA from the pup, you end up curing Ochi, and that's essentially the end of Pikmin 4. There's not much else to the story in Pikmin 4, especially in part 2, because all it is basically you just going after Louis, and that's it. Now, at first, I thought part 2 was kind of meh, because there was nothing else. There was only like 2 levels that you had to explore left, and there was nothing else to the game after that. You do have one little segment that you can do with Olimar, which essentially allows you to figure out what happened to him before he became what he became. Now, interestingly enough, the thing that you do in this segment is essentially going through the levels that you went through in Pikmin 4, but it's in the style of Pikmin 1. What I mean is you have a certain time limit to basically get every single ship part. Unfortunately, getting all the ship parts don't matter, because Olimar ends up getting the bad ending from Pikmin 1, and the Pikmins essentially put him inside the onion, turning him into the Leafling. Yeah, the bad ending that we see from Pikmin 1 is essentially the ending that we see to Olimar's journey in Pikmin 4. Kind of end up sort of quote unquote insinuating that this is a reboot. And the reason as to why you can say that this is a reboot, if you notice from the very beginning of the game, you notice that you are doing the same thing as you did in Pikmin 1. Getting an engine, the only thing that happens is that Olimar meets with Moss. So you combine engine, red Pikmin, Moss, you essentially have a retelling of Pikmin 1's story. So they kind of retcon Pikmin 1's story and decided to just say that, hey, Pikmin 1 didn't happen, lol. I'm sorry. It is kind of weird that this kind of storytelling kind of reminds me of Galaxy 2, where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, all that stuff that happened in Galaxy 1, yeah, that didn't happen. I'm like, that's so ass. So yeah, Pikmin 4 is essentially Pikmin 1 again, just minus, you know, the Pikmin 1 mechanics. So, I don't know what to tell you. Even though it's kind of like a very weird way of rebooting the series, I feel that Pikmin 4 is a very good introduction to folks who wants to get into the series. Like, you have Ochi, who's a very significant better captain and actually is more useful. You have the Pikmins with the Ice Pikmin and the Glow Pikmins, which are pretty interesting. You have better cave systems. You have better movement, better camera, better bosses, better in a lot of things, in a lot of ways. You can kind of tell that I like this game, very much so. Like, I really do like this game. And if you think that you're done, You're probably not, because you can go out of your way to do all the Dandori stuff to get platinum. You can also do like this other Sage Dandori thing that we didn't really do because we just wanted to beat the game at this point, because we kind of didn't really want to waste too much time, because I think it kind of was like a very long segment that we didn't want to do, and we already kind of did one of these segments already, so we kind of just didn't bother with it. But yeah, Pikmin 4 is like, I know like the way how I was talking through with 1, 2, and 3, it kind of felt like I was rushing with it. Here's the thing. You guys already know what Pikmin 1 is about. You guys already know my thoughts on Pikmin 1. You guys already know my thoughts on Pikmin 2. And you guys already know my thoughts on Pikmin 3. But Pikmin 4 was a different beast because A, it was a new game, and B, it was something that it was something I actually really wanted to talk about, because this series I didn't like from the beginning. You have to remember this. I didn't care about the series when I first played the first game because I sucked at it. But then when I played it, I appreciated 1, 2, and 3. Even though I complained about 3 being just HD Pikmin 1, I still enjoyed my time for what it was, alright? Like, that's just the thing. I just enjoyed my time for what it was. Sometimes, you gotta end up enjoying some of the goods and the bads to be able to get to the greatness. That's how video games are. I play Kingdom Hearts. I should already know this already. But no, Pikmin 4 is a very incredible experience, and I'm glad that I managed to be able to play through all 4 of the games to see the growth of how it went from being what it is to a simple Dandori game to being a game that focuses so much on working with your pup. It's so good. Ochi was the thing that probably took this game forever to develop, because they probably needed to figure out how to make Ochi work, which I don't really blame them, because trying to make AI characters work in any video game usually always takes freaking forever, depending on who you ask. So having this game be like a good starting point for when Pikmin 5 comes out is very good. So, you know, if you want to ignore Pikmin 1 through 3, hey, Nintendo does it too, so you guys are good to go. But yeah, I end up giving like Pikmin 4 a massive, huge score if I actually ever scored anything in any of my stinking talking videos. But I give it a very massive high tier. My tier list for the games is obviously Pikmin 4 is number 1, Pikmin 2 is number 2, Pikmin 1 is number 1, and Pikmin 3 is Pikmin 1 is number 3, and Pikmin 3 is number 4. It's also just like, even though that game is short, Pikmin 1 is short. I don't know. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. I don't know. Maybe I probably don't really like 1 and I do like 3. I don't know. Maybe it'll change when I play the deluxe version. I probably should have played the deluxe version to kind of give a much better opinion on 3, if I'm being honest. But hey, I played what I played, and if people don't like it, well, that's too damn bad. What are you gonna do? You can't really change my mind, alright? It just is what it is. Probably complain in the comments, but hey, if you complain in the comments, that means I got some engagement. So, belittle me if you want, but don't do it too much. I actually might cry. Or probably not. I don't really know. Anyways, I think that's it. I think I finally did a number on talking about the entirety of Pikmin 4. Did I get to the story properly? Probably not. Did I end up talking about all the mechanics? Probably. I don't even know if I actually talked about all the mechanics of the game. But anyways, I've been Pika, and I'll be seeing you guys next time in an electrifying video. Catch you guys later. See yas.